Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com, and you're listening to the Alex Merced Cast, or the podcast under one of many names, depending whether you're looking on Spotify, iTunes, Twitter, whatever. But what I want to talk about today is political correctness, because basically there's two sides to this tale, and I always feel like people are always extremely on one side or the other. Well, most people aren't, but the political people with political voices tend to take sort of a very hard turn on this. Now, to me, I'm sympathetic to the idea of, like, I'm an individualist. So in the sense that I want people to be treated as individuals, and I want to assume less about them as possible. I want to give them the opportunity to show me who they are on their terms. Okay, which I think, because I want to give them the opportunity to be who they are, to earn my respect, to enrich my life through experiences and relationships and whatnot. So when people want to sit there and say, hey, maybe this language assumes too much, like the implications of certain words imply that certain things are just sort of constants, because in the past they were thought of as constants, and now we're trying to move away from making assumptions about people, which I think is a good thing, because to me that's more individualistic. I don't think that's a bad thing. So I don't think, in the sense that we want to communicate in a way that makes less assumptions, that's less collective, and more allows for more individuality. I think that is good. Um, the problem is that when people try to take that effort and turn it into a political weapon, okay, and this is where you end up having this sort of very big reaction to it, because people get confused. When people get confused, they get frustrated. When they get frustrated, they get angry. When they get angry, that turns into hate. Okay, and so this is what you've seen over the last, like, so many years, where basically there are legitimate concerns in, saying, okay, let's rethink whether this is the best word in this context. But then, instead of saying, okay, hey, let's make an effort to make the way we communicate better, because that's always a thing. We're always innovating everything in our lives. It becomes a tool to again, a political weapon. And the most recent example is with the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett for the Supreme Court, where some senator tried to imply that she's homophobic, or she's trying to say that homosexuality is a choice because of her use of the word sexual preference. Most people know that sexual preference just means, like, what is your sexual orientation? Like, never before have I ever heard. And I try to be open to all the conversations on all sides going on, that sexual preference is in some way assuming something about sexuality and its origins. So, and this is where you have a problem, okay? Because this is where you create the whole right. Because when you sit there and you just suddenly change the rules out of nowhere for the sole purpose, okay, it's completely transparent. The reasoning for this was to hurt Amy Coney Barrett and her chances to be a judge, because, of course, Democrats don't want a conservative-leaning Supreme Court, which is understandable. But the problem is, if you're someone who doesn't sit there and focus on all these conversations, it gets overwhelming, because you feel like the rules are constantly changing on you. And if the rules are constantly changing on you, and you don't know what you can and can't say on a day-to-day basis, and saying the wrong thing, people use as a reason to eliminate your job, to oust you from social circles, to close opportunities to you, that gets really frustrating. And and when people get that can be confusing, it can be frustrating, which makes people angry. And then, instead of them, over time, kind of learning how to communicate better, and us coming to a more individualist place, you create this air of frustration that turns into this sort of response and anti-political correctness. And that's where, like, that's coming from. Like, I am not anti-political correctness. I am very careful about the terms I use, and even then, I'm not perfect. I think it's not a bad idea to use less gendered language, because, again, Why make assumptions if I don't have to? I don't believe in collectivism. I don't want to make assumptions about people based on appearances, based on what religion they are, based on anything. I want to give people the space to be individuals. So to me, it makes sense to have language that assumes less. Um, but to me, that's a courtesy, not a requirement in a sense. Like me trying my best to speak in that kind of language is me modeling a courtesy and hoping others will pick up on that courtesy and encourage others to. But when you treat it as sort of a litmus test for your ability to participate in society, yeah, you basically that everyone has to be constantly focused on knowing sort of what are the right terms, what's the right language, what's the right thing. You're gonna create an aggressive anti-movement and actually probably persuade more people to go out of their way to not do the thing than to do the thing. Okay, and this is always the problem with rhetoric of like rights, because when you start labeling everything a right, that changes psychology, changes your psychological relationship with something. Okay, so it's not that I don't want everyone to have health care, but when you call health care a right, it changes the amount of responsibility an individual feels they have over attaining the thing. Okay, when you say like free speech is a right, it's not because you did anything special. It's just you have the ability to speak, so you should be able to speak. There isn't really any kind of effort you have to make to do free speech. That's why it's sort of a right. For you to not have free speech, there has to be sort of positive action taken on you. I have to do something to prevent you from speaking. Okay, that's fine to use right in that term, because you taking for granted your ability to talk or you're the fact that you're alive, okay, doesn't mean you're going to fail in some sort of responsibility, and it doesn't mean and at the same time you're not putting in some sort of positive obligation on someone else. But the same thing goes with the way we interact with each other. If we treat good behavior as a courtesy versus treating it as sort of a requirement for participation in society, okay, you make the requirements too high, people just won't want to participate in society. They will reject society, and you end up with sort of this really fragmented thing we have now. Okay, so again, I don't like all the anti-political correctness. Okay, I am very sensitive to the fact that because historically different assumptions were made, or certain different cultural imbalances and power dynamics, blah blah blah. Some people had it harder, some people had it easier. Understandable, and that's always the case in every society, everywhere. Some people have it harder, some people have it easier. You always try to see if you can improve the balance. Okay, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to do that, or caring to see how you can make things better. How can we communicate in a way that allows us to interact better? Because that just means better markets. The more we like each other, the more we're going to exchange, the more we're going to trade, the better pricing you're going to have in the market. Overall, that's a good thing. But again, the difference is sort of how it gets framed. Again, the difference between it being setting this really high bar threshold to just associate with people, versus saying, okay, well, we should be courteous to each other. Let's all do our best to model as best we can. We're not going to be perfect, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't constantly be trying to be improved. But just because you fail perfection doesn't necessarily mean you get ousted from society. So, just because that whole interaction I find kind of frustrating, because I'm seeing actual left, like people who I know who refer to themselves as communists, were leaders of the communist parties, and they're being like, that was not, I never knew. They're confounded that suddenly the appropriateness of the word sexual preference changed all of a sudden. And again, that's the kind of response that's going to create even more backlash, even more hostility towards improving communication. And again, it's not about, I hate the term political correctness, because it's not for politics. It's we should always be trying to find ways to be more courteous to each other, and it's not just in the way we talk, in the way we treat each other, not because it's some sort of obligation or some sort of responsibility that you have. It's because it's a good thing to do. And when you do good things, it encourages other people to do good things. And when we're better to each other, we trust each other. Society becomes a place where we all, again, exchange willingly, consensually more. You're going to create a situation where there is more consent in society than less. Because people are more willing to consent with people that they like. That's it. It's a very simple message. But politics, okay? This is why I hate elections, why I hate electoral politics. While I'm involved in it, it just taints everything. It taints every attempt to make things better and turns it into some sort of political weapon. It takes everything that's sacred, that's fine, that's good, and turns it into something dirty, some reason to judge someone. And it's really frustrating. So, yeah. That's all I wanted to say. So, again, my name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. Right now, I'm just a guy who happens to be a libertarian. Okay, I'm not running for anything. I'm not in any kind of position. I'm just Alex Merced these days. I hope you guys like my podcast. Subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Go check out alexmerced.com to go find everything. Have a great day and enjoy.